Do you know how you meet a new homeschool mom and you walk away from that conversation and you just say, that was so encouraging and she's my people right there? That was for me today, sitting down and talking with Carrie DeFrancisco from Coffee with Carrie. And I know you're going to feel like that too. Me, even as a mom who's been homeschooling for a while and graduated too, I walked away from this conversation encouraged and just feeling equipped for the next steps and just excited about it. So I am looking forward to you feeling that same exact way. So grab your cup of coffee and have that cup of coffee with Carrie and I right now. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening. Welcome to the podcast today. I am really excited to be chatting with my new friend, Carrie, and we are just going to talk about some really good stuff. I was just saying to her, this is going to be some information that you don't think you need, but it's going to really help encourage you. So, Carrie, welcome to the podcast. Can you share a little bit about you, your family, and how you encourage homeschool moms?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast, and your website is fabulous. So what an honor to be here. So thank you so much. But yes, a little bit about me. Married to my husband. I think we're going on year 29 this year. We have 2 kids. They're both adults. One's 25, one's 21. So I'm in that empty nester stage of my life. But we homeschooled, I like to say, from birth all the way through high school. And we live in California, and I'm originally from New Orleans. And it's just been a beautiful adventure, this homeschooling thing. And I kind of miss it now that I'm on the retired end of it.
Isn't that funny? I feel the same way too. Now that I'm just down to my one kiddo, I kind of miss the crazy times. And I think sometimes I'm like, oh, those were, I've said before, it just, we don't know where the good old days when we're in the good old days. But we're going to talk a bit more about high school and what that kind of looks like and just encourage the mom. So why did you decide to homeschool through high school? And then the other part of it is, what are some of the fears most parents have about homeschooling through high school?
Well, it's funny that because earlier when we were talking, I was one of those moms that, first of all, I had no intention of homeschooling. So I like to call myself an accidental homeschooler, right? And so I was a public school teacher, and I was actually an adjunct professor. So I taught in the credentialing program. So I taught teachers how to teach. So I thought homeschooling moms were crazy, and this option of education was just nutso. But the Lord had other ideas, and so. But I'm so glad we started to homeschool. But like we were saying earlier, as we were homeschooling, we loved it. All of us, the kids, my husband, we just loved it. But every time we were at a family get together or nosy neighbor down the street, and they would say, so, this homeschooling thing, it's cute and all, but you're not going to homeschool through high school, right? And for the longest time, my answer was always an emphatic, no way. I'm not homeschooling the high school years. I'm not smart enough. I'm not organized enough. You just name it. I had all these reasons why we weren't going to homeschool. So it was never my intention to homeschool, much less homeschool through the high school years. But my kids had other ideas. And so when my daughter was in 8th grade, we kind of sat her down and we said, so what do you think? Do you want to keep doing this? Do you want to keep homeschooling through the high school years? And she was like, Mom, why would I give up this gig? This is awesome. I mean, I get to figure out what I'm going to learn, when I'm going to learn it, how I'm going to learn it. I've got all this free time to read and do dance. So it was my kids that actually convinced me that, no, we're going to homeschool all the way through high school. And I'm so glad we did. That's how we decided to homeschool the high school years. But I think the biggest fears out there were mainly the ones that I had, and you probably had, even though you had the intention of homeschooling all the way through, is I know a lot of moms, we feel like we're just not enough. especially during the high school years, that we're not going to know enough. How are we going to teach chemistry when we barely passed it in high school ourselves? Or are we going to be enough when it comes to relationships and things like that? So I do think that fear is a big one, which, by the way, moms will we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in our conversation. It's not something that you have to be fearful of. And another big fear that moms have, and dads have this one too, is that there's going to be holes in their education, that they're not going to be able to, that maybe they're not enough as the teacher, but that their instruction and what they're learning isn't going to be enough, and that there's going to be holes. But I tell moms, and they're always so surprised when I say this, but I tell moms, there's going to be holes. There's going to be holes because not all of us were homeschooled. Most of us had the public school or the private school experience. And I know when I graduated high school, I had tons of holes. I didn't realize how dumb I was until I started homeschooling. I was like, oh my gosh, there's quite a few holes here. And so, yeah, realistically, there's going to be holes. But in all honesty, I didn't want my kids to graduate high school knowing everything, because if that was my goal, I was going to fail miserably because I was not going to be able to meet that expectation. So my goals were that when they graduated, they still had a love of learning and they knew how to learn something new or to teach themselves something. And if they didn't know something, they knew how to go find the answers. That was my goal. And if they learned some really great stuff along the way, that was awesome. So that's a big fear, that there's going to be holes, but I really did want my kids to graduate knowing everything, because what's left later on if you already know everything, right? And I think the other one, which you get over it pretty quick, is the FOMO, that they're going to miss out on those milestones like a high school graduation, prom, or playing sports, right? Not being able to do that, or missing out on friendships, because there's still people out there that think homeschoolers aren't social and that they don't have friends and they don't know how to make friends. And so, yeah, I think those are the three biggest fears. And really, now that I'm on the other end of it, there was no reason whatsoever that I had to have those fears or even think that that kind of stuff was going to be an issue.
Your story of not intending to homeschool at all, and then not necessarily intending to homeschool high school, I'm sure resonates with a lot of moms. And yeah, I was wait, what? God wants me to homeschool? That's not in my wheelhouse. I'm not smart enough. Because when you were saying you graduated high school, you felt dumb. I'm laughing over here because I felt the same exact way. There were gaps in our education, and there's going to be gaps in every education. There's no way we can even know everything. And those fears that you've touched on are 100%. I've seen them time and time again. And isn't it funny how we have these same fears and we don't always realize the mom sitting across the table at the co-op has the same exact fears? And so let's just kind of call it out and throw it out in the open there and be able to maybe eventually, like you and I, we can laugh about it now. How we're like, wow, that was kind of silly to think that we weren't smart enough. And like you're saying, homeschool, I feel like I'm so much smarter now that I have homeschooled, and I love to learn too, whereas I didn't. Yeah. Kind of, felt like that wasn't an exciting thing to do. School was just kind of get through it and get it done so I could go home and
do what you wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the advantages that you have found with homeschooling high school, and what was your favorite part?
Well, I'll save my favorite part for last, but I think there's so many advantages to homeschooling the high school years. But I think the first one is that you can ground everything in truth. So you don't have to worry about what's being taught down the street or someone else's standards or what the state thinks is important, or you can literally spend the high school, well, actually the whole time, but especially the high school years, grounding your teens in truth. So when you do launch them out into the world, you know that not only are they going to hit the mark, but that they're going to know the truth and they're going to be grounded in it. But I also think another huge advantage that maybe a lot of moms don't realize, because they might still be stuck in that school at home mentality, and that they think that, oh, when we get to high school, we really have to do what they do down, at the public school, is that you have the freedom to chart your own course. Or even better, your teen has the freedom and flexibility to chart their own course. And so, yeah, your state might require, depending on what state you live in, particular things that they have to learn. But you as the parent and their guidance counselor and their college counselor, you guys get to decide with your teen what they're going to learn, how they're going to learn it, when they're going to learn it. And so that, I think, is a huge advantage, because you can tailor what they're learning and when they're learning it. So, and then another one that kind of goes along with that is that not only do you get to decide what they learn or how they're learning it, but you get to they get to learn at their own pace. So, like for my daughter, one of her biggest goals was she wanted to graduate early. So she wanted to start getting to the college level stuff. And so she wanted to speed things up. And then my son, he's, dyslexic, he has dysgraphia, ADHD, and so for him, it was a huge advantage that he could excel and go faster in the areas of his strengths, but in the areas that were challenges, he could go at his own pace. And so he could slow it down. He could do it in a different way. He could throw a baseball in the air while he was trying to concentrate or think. And so I think that's another huge advantage, that when you're stuck in the four walls for 7 or 8 hours a day, you don't have the freedom and flexibility to learn at your own pace and to learn what you want to learn. And then I think the other huge thing that goes along with that is because they have so much time on their hands, it's actually a good thing. And so they have extra time to actually discover their purpose in life and their passions. And when they already know kind of what giftings they have and what their strengths are, they have the time to develop those gifts and use it to bless others, or maybe start their own business with it. So they have this extra time to really delve into the things that they absolutely love and actually want to spend time doing. But I think my favorite part, I know this might sound strange to some people, especially those who aren't homeschooling just yet, was hanging out with my teens. It was so much fun. I thought teaching them when they were younger was super fun, right? The mud pies and the playing around and the Legos and all that kind of stuff. I thought, and the read alouds, I thought that was just a blast. And I thought, it can't get any better than this. But the wonder years have nothing on the high school years. It was such a blessing. And the Lord truly does save the best of homeschooling for last. And so that was my favorite part, was getting to hang out with my teens every day and watching them do what they love to do.
That's beautiful. And it's countercultural to what we hear in society. There's a lot of parents, and the media will put down kids and teens and say that they don't want to hang out with their parents, and the parents don't want to hang out with them. And I see this time and time again with homeschoolers. That doesn't mean that it's a guarantee, but it's because I think it's probably because we put a lot of time in when they're younger with the relationships, and they enjoy being together with us, and we enjoy being with them. We understand each other really well. So that's beautiful. And I hope that that's a big encouragement to the homeschool moms that are listening, that don't be afraid even of the teen years. I mean, I was afraid of them until I decided I'm not going to be afraid of them. I'm going to pour into my kids, right? Teaching them that truth that you're talking about when they're younger, and they will become teenagers that I want to hang out with. And I love that you did the same thing. So what are some first steps to getting started?
Well, first of all, pray, and talk with your spouse and your teen, just to make sure you're all on the same page, right? So you definitely want to make sure this is what the Lord's calling your family to do, and that you're all on the same page with God and with each other. But then practically, the next thing you want to do is you really want to sit down with your teen and ask 2 questions. Why are we homeschooling the high school years in the first place? So you really got to know your why. Why are you doing this? Because the answer to that question is really going to help you make the rest of your decisions. The kind of classes you put them in, the curriculum you use, the activities they do, the kind of friends you allow them to hang out with, all that kind of stuff. So all the things that you're typically thinking that you need to be doing in order to homeschool high school, you really can't do, or at least do well, until you answer that question. What is your why? And then the second question to ask is to ask your teen, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or post-graduation, or in 10 years? So what are your goals, that when you're done with all of your high school, where do you see yourself? Because the answer to that question will then help you chart their course, right? So if their goal is to go to college and they want to go to a 4-year university right out of the bat, the way you set up their 4-year plan or what they're going to do for the next 3 or 4 years is going to be different than the student or your child who says, well, I just want to get out in the world. I just want to start working, or I want to start my own business. I want to go to trade school. I want to be a mechanic. I want to do, a cosmetology, whatever it is. If it's not college related and it's not something you need a degree for or any kind of certificate, that student's course of study for the next 3 or 4 years is going to be very different. So you need to start there. You need to know your why, and then you need to know what the goals are. And then after that is definitely go to Homeschool Legal Defense Association, or at least your state homeschool association, and make sure you know what the requirements are for homeschooling the high school years. So every state, it's a little different, but you want to make sure that, if you're already homeschooling, you know what you have to do to legally homeschool in your state, but find out, are there specific subjects they have to do, or a certain number of hours, or do they have to have some kind of testing at the end of it? So know the legal part of it, so that as you're creating this plan with your student as to what they're going to learn and when they learn it, you include in that whatever is required by the state to get a diploma. That's pretty much what you need to do to get started in this. And it really surprises moms, because really the first thing moms think they have to do is pick out curriculum. So what are we going to use? And actually, that's pretty much one of the last things that you're going to do. So, yeah.
I love your talk of just the reverse engineering. Where do you see yourself? What a great question. And it can be really easily lost as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when a teen is asked that question and they see that their answer is valued and mom and dad really want to hear what that is and they're working together, I think that helps their relationships probably too.
Mm-hmm.
They want to help me get to where I want to get to, not just where my parents want me to go to and to do, and to know that they have a voice in it. And that's the fun, I think, of the high school years too, is exploring. And then you can also come up with a great 4-year plan. And then a year into it, you're like, no, this isn't working.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that also works too for the student, that when you ask that question and the teen says, I don't know. And that's the beauty of homeschooling the high school years. They have so much freedom and time on their hands. And we as the moms have so much freedom. We could give them lots of different experiences. And eventually, like what happened with my daughter, they figure it out during the high school years. Well, I mean, she already had an idea of what she wanted to do. But like you said, in the middle of high school, she realized, nope, that's not what God wants me to do. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so it even works for a student who has no clue what they want to do.
Because even when they explore something and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. Like your daughter, maybe 2 years into it. Then that's crossed off the list. And she knows for sure that's not what she wants to do. So I don't think the time is ever wasted. It's all experiences that are built upon each other. Now that you are on the other side of homeschooling, if you could go back and have a do-over, what advice would you give to yourself as a homeschool mom in the first few years?
First of all, I would tell myself, my younger, very idealistic self, to just breathe, to just take a chill pill. Because I remember when I was starting out, the mentor moms that were seasoned, and we would be at Park Day, and they would tell me all the time, oh, honey, cherish this time, just enjoy it. And I'm like, are you crazy? You didn't see what I had to do to get here and what's waiting for me when I get home. And I couldn't appreciate that fabulous advice to enjoy the time, because yes, it might seem like you're in the thick of it right now, but I know it's a cliche, but in a blink of an eye, you're graduated. If you did your job well, you worked yourself out of a job. And so off they go into the world, living their life and pursuing their dreams. And so, we only have them for a little bit of time. And if we have the privilege of actually being their teacher too, so I definitely would chill out, and I would trust the process. I'm type A. And like I said earlier, I was a classroom teacher. So I always had that self-doubt in the back of my mind about, but you should be doing this, or they should be at this point, or I need to follow these, standards, whatever. And it was always a checklist. And I just wish I would have trusted the process, that the Lord created all of us to be learning machines. And I tell my kids all the time that you guys turned out awesome, not because of me, but in spite of me. And I just wish I would have got out of their way, because every time I was the biggest problem, every time I was in the way, learning wasn't happening. So I wish I would have trusted the process, that God knows what he's doing and that with some guidance and some things around, they're going to learn. And I think my kids and I would have been less stressed if I would have learned that lesson a lot sooner.
I feel like you might have just peeked into my head, into my brain, because yes, I would say the same thing. And I love that you remember that those mentor moms were saying that to you, and you were like, you have no idea. And they're like, oh, honey.
I do.
Yeah. So us old moms, I call us the old homeschool moms, we're like,
no. We're seasoned.
Oh, seasoned, sorry.
Seasoned moms, not old.
Old but fabulous. Okay, seasoned. I like that better. That's cute. I love that advice. So as we wrap up here, what's been the impact? I think I have heard a bit here, but maybe we can kind of like tie it in together. What's been the impact of homeschooling upon you, your children, and your family as a whole?
You already brought it up, but it's relationships. My kids, you would think after spending 25 years, 12, let's just go with 12 years, right, of educating 24 hours together, that they would be so happy to get out of the house and be away. But my kids actually enjoy my company still. And they still want to be a part of my husband and I's life. And we're like the first people they want to call when something great happens or when they have an issue that they want to discuss. And just the relationship I have and my husband has with our kids is it's a gift. It's a surprise gift. I didn't realize that was going to be the best part of homeschooling. And then also the relationship that my kids have together, that they are each other's best buds and forever friends. And they just know that they always have each other. And yeah, there were sibling squabblings and stuff like that, but they are each other's go-to people as well. And I truly think that, yeah, you can have a great relationship if you don't homeschool your kids, or your kids can have great relationships with their siblings without homeschooling. But I think you have a better chance, and it's exponentially more probable that you're just going to have this wonderful relationship with your adult kids when they grow up.
Do you think that's attributed to the amount of time that you spend together, or is it attributed to maybe the listening of you? Like, as you were saying earlier about the high school asking, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Of giving them that opportunity. Do you think that some of that's attributed to that or anything else as well?
I think all of that, but also you could probably relate to this too, but as a mom, just in general, but a homeschooling mom, I messed up a lot. And there were so many days that I had to ask for forgiveness. And there were so many times that my kids gave me grace. And I think not only the responsibility, but the privilege of learning alongside my kids and living life alongside my kids. And them seeing that, yeah, mom messes up, but this is how much she's grown from it. And them as well messing up severely sometimes, but yet mom still loves them, warts and all, and we're here for them no matter what. I just think just the whole idea of loving and learning and living together just really attributed. You get to know somebody a lot when you're spending so much time together and living and learning life lessons together.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think they do. They start to see you as actually people instead of not just, my parents were wonderful, but I went to public school and didn't spend as much time with them. And they were just those that set the rules for me. And I didn't always understand why they set those rules. There wasn't the time to explain and to pour in. And we have that time with homeschooling. And I love that your kids are older, and I love that they want to spend time with you. It's just such a testament and such a encouragement to the moms that are listening. Keep at it. Like, don't stop. The fruit will come. So the listener's been listening to you and they want to connect with you. They want to find out more about you, find out about your books that you've written, correct? And maybe even, I know you're speaking at some homeschool conferences and conventions. Where can they get all of that information from you?
Really, the best place to go is my website, coffeewithcarrie.org. And then once you go there, it'll bring you to everything, how to find me on Instagram, where my podcast is, Coffee with Carrie. I have YouTube channel that I have some videos and playlists there. And I have 2 books, Just Breathe and Take a Sip of Coffee, which is all about Sabbath schooling and simplifying your homeschooling. And then my new book that just came out is all about high school. So homeschooling the high school years. So yeah, anything and everything you can find at Coffee with Carrie.
Perfect. I will put that link in the show notes. So I encourage you to go over to her website, grab her books, listen to her podcast, all the things. But Carrie, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
You might be many years away from the high school years, but I really hope that this episode has given you a little pep to your step, empowered you a little bit, we'll say, to know that you can do the high school years. And you know that you hear from people, oh, just like Carrie and I have heard, you're not going to homeschool in high school, are you? If you are feeling that you are going to homeschool through high school, don't listen to them. You can actually say, yes, I am, or just walk away and don't worry about justifying your response. But that fear that you might be feeling when it comes to homeschooling high school and doing it all the way through, I hope that some of that has been washed away. I encourage you to check out the links in the show notes, grab some of Carrie's books, go find her on social media, listen to her podcast so that she can continue to encourage you in your homeschool journey. That's why we're here. We want you to feel like you can do this because guess what, Mama? You definitely can. Continue to homeschool your kid and you can homeschool through high school. We'll see you right back here on the podcast in just a couple more days. Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.